By the way, my name is Zelina Chinwan. I'm a licensed clinical therapist, and I talk all things mental health and living your life unapologetically, how to do that from a mental health perspective. And today's topic is mommy versus daddy issues. What is that? I get this question a lot. It is a term that has been coined in the mental health sector. How does that relate? How is that important? Why it's important? And why am I talking about it tonight? Okay. So I think that it's very important to talk about mommy and daddy issues, because sometimes when you're trying to do the inner work or trying to figure out what's the reason why you may be attracting narcissistic people in your life or toxic people in your life, are you the problem? Are they the problem? As a therapist, I do understand that sometimes we have to go beyond the surface. Can't stay surface most of the time when we're trying to figure out what is actually going on, when we're trying to figure out the root problem as to what's attributing to our current circumstances that's keeping us stuck, that's keeping us stagnant. And when I say stuck and stagnant, keeping repetitive patterns going on in our lives, that's keeping us from progressing, that's living our best life. The basic foundation is human behavior, understanding how the human mind works, and then also the aspect of theory, why people do what they do, psychology, sociology. And as a therapist, I think it's very beneficial that people understand that there's a science, a human behavior science as to why people do what they do. And most of the time it's influenced off of their environment, how they were raised, and the people that influence their beliefs and patterns and their teachings along the way. I know that is a harsh topic because, again, we're raised in society that we should honor the people that brought us in the world, and we want to do that. But in all actuality, if those beliefs, if those patterns have been toxic or debilitating to us in some type of way, then that's in itself something that we need to address. That can be quite touchy. And I want to put this disclaimer out. I have to say this. When we're looking at different patterns and behaviors, we don't look to blame. I think it's so easy for us to say, well, mom did this and dad did this. When you're going through therapy, okay, if you've ever been through therapy, we tend to not look at the actual individual. We focus on the behavior. We look at the actual behavior patterns, okay? Because our goal is not to focus on the individual, it's to focus on the behavior patterns to see what actually took place so that we can identify, help you understand, so that we can help connect the dots so that we can move forward. We cannot move forward without us sometime going back. That's why we do a psychosocial assessment. Let's make that clear. In the world of medicine, if you go to the hospital, they call that triage, right? When you go into the hospital and you say, or you go to the doctor, they may do a short, brief assessment with you. We just can't diagnose without asking, what's your symptoms? When did this start? Okay. And sometimes that can be a misconception. You know, sometimes people feel like, oh God, they're getting too much in my business. And that's not the case. The case is we're just trying to pinpoint so that we can best help you identify. And that could be very, very different, especially if you've been raised to be guarded. I understand that. I get that. Not just being a therapist, but being a human being raised in some of these similar home environments as well. So when we talk about mom and daddy issues, one of the things that I see a lot is that our foundation, I always say this, is the epitome of who we are today. You didn't drop out the sky yesterday. You didn't drop out the sky yet two weeks ago. And sometimes that foundation can be so rigid to the point of the actual person you are today is the person that's stuck and stagnated, literally, in terms of the decisions that you make, the people that you choose in your life, the platonic partnerships, in terms of the people that you date, okay? If you were raised in a home environment where the home environment was literally toxic and chaotic and it was dysfunctional, 9 times out of 10, you're probably going to mirror those same type of behaviors in your own life unknowingly, because again, that has been a part of your foundation. So I say all of this to say is that I don't get to make this up. Psychology says it, and as a therapist, that's what we're rooted in and we're grounded in terms of theory to help you understand that maybe this has something to do with your adulthood. We're not going to stay here. We just want to connect the dots so that you can understand, apply logic to it. We can move past and you can learn the coping mechanisms so that you can start living instead of existing. What's the difference between mommy issues and daddy issues? Mommy issues is a strained relationship with a mother figure and a child in childhood that is normally very toxic, very controlling. There is a thing where parents can be narcissistic. I always say that people who attract narcissistic partners, their first bullies were parents that were narcissistic. That's taught and learned behavior. Normally they were taught by narcissistic parents, those traits to stay in relationships. Because most of the time, if we connect the dots and we take the names out and we look at character and behavior, those parental guardians resemble those same characteristics. I hate to say that because we live in a society, honor thy mother and father, but if the parent has not done their work, if the parent has not done their trauma shadow work, unpacking, then it is so literally where they will pass their own trauma to their own children, subconsciously for control, for various reasons. No one likes to talk about these hard topics, but someone has to, because again, relatively, I see people struggle every day and they try their best to figure it out, but no one wants to talk past the veil of, it's just my partner. It's just my relationship. I don't think it's past that. And if you go a little deeper, normally the person that's the partner in your life is a mirror of someone else in the bloodline that's resembling the same characteristics as the partner. Like issues, some of the signs of mommy issues in adulthood is what I see is women have a very hard time making relationships and adult friendships with other women. They may struggle with accepting friendships with other women or bonding with other women. Why is that? Because the image that they've had of a female that was supposed to nurture and provide that to them is what? Is not the best image. Growing up, that person may not be the best image of woman relationship would be. So as they grow older, they have this trust or this barrier with other women. They may not trust them. They may not see them as their and having their best interests. And you say, well, why is it that I can't make friends? Why is it that I can't keep friends? Well, your caregiver may have been very manipulative. She may have been very controlling, very narcissistic, right? I've heard clients come and say, my mother literally does not have my best interests, and had a hard time telling me this. If it wasn't their way, if the parent did not have it their way, they would go out of their way to make their life a living hell if they lost that control and demand over their child. It's fine until it's not their way. Right? With daddy issues, what we see is the hypersexuality, where the child, or the hypermasculinity in a female, or the absent emotional attachment connection with the father, if in the event the father was absent mentally, emotionally, or physically in the home environment. Boys can be overly emotional or have poor emotional regulation because they may lack the balance, because they were overly coddled by the mother. In the family dynamic, there's a balance, okay? Is innately for the woman to provide the nurturing to the home environment. But when the balance and the equilibrium in the home environment is not balanced, and a single parent home and the father is not there, whether he's there, not there physically, or he's not there emotionally, the son, he may have poor impulse control. He may lack that assurance in terms of that masculinity. And that's not to say that has nothing to do with his sexuality. It's just the fact of that assurance in terms of confidence. He needs to being assured of himself and growing into his manhood. What I see the most is males don't have a father in their home. It's almost as if they lack the capacity of, they don't know how to be able to carry on the baton in the adulthood, as simple as sometimes as changing a tire, putting a tie on, as taking a screwdriver and fixing it. So what happens is later on in life, because we haven't had those skills or we haven't had those virtues placed in that person as a child, all this is family dynamics, are given to them in that emotional stance to nurture that masculinity. When we have that home environment that's been broken in terms of lacking a lack of empathy, and then we have a woman who's been probably raised by a mother who's been taught you have to always make sure you're straight. The Michelin man, the hypermasculinity woman who has her own trauma, who had a man walk out on her and has not dealt with her issues, who's teaching her daughter that, have the hyper independence. And then you have another young man who didn't have that and overly coddled by a woman. He's an adult now and she's an adult, but in their mind, in this fairy tale psychological mind, they want to come together, and they only coming with the skills they have. This, and you don't even understand a catastrophe.